Hurricane Florence collided with the coast around 6 a.m., slamming into Wilmington, North Carolina, packing wind gusts of 105 miles per hour and demonstrating she's no lady.
It is making a landfall coming ashore here near Wilmington, North Carolina. There you can see the eye wall, the western edge of it already over the inland areas. So Florence will continue to move slowly inland during the day today, but a large part of the circulation is out over the open waters here. So we'll continue to see very heavy rain spinning into eastern North Carolina, and that will spread into South Carolina as well. So that is going to be the major story out of this hurricane here, the flooding. Looking at the future path of Florence, notice it stays a minimal hurricane as it moves slowly west and southwest today into tonight. It will weaken further once that entire circulation gets away from the water during the weekend. Then eventually the moisture streams north. But near this path, just to the north, we will be looking at tremendous amounts of rain.
In New Bern, North Carolina, 150 people had to be rescued from rising floodwaters.
Surviving this storm will be a test of endurance, teamwork, common sense, and patience.
In South Carolina, another state in the hurricane's crosshairs,
Proverbs 6:6-8 says,
emergency officials turned to the Bible and prayed to God.
help us to use this event as a rallying point for unity. Help keep us safe, O Lord. Help us to honor and praise you even in the midst of the storm.
Florence is expected to dump some 20 inches of rain on Myrtle Beach, is churning storm surges up to 10 feet, and farther inland, rivers are already overflowing their banks. Power outages are already widespread. Some 40,000 power workers from 17 states are mobilized to respond. Tens of thousands of people across the Carolinas and Virginia are weathering the storm in shelters.
Once these winds start blowing at that tropical storm rate, it will be virtually impossible for the rescuers to get in to rescue you.
President Trump says he's confident the federal government is ready to respond. Many in the storm's path are holding on to the promise that they're not alone.
Help us to remember that the same God that created the heavens and the earth, that is the same God that is with us and will see us through the storm. We ask all these things in your gracious name, Lord.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Well, joining us now to talk about the storm's track and the impact is Joe Bastardi. He's the chief forecaster for Weatherbell Analytics. And Joe, I've got to ask the question, what happened to this storm? It seems to have changed track, and it seems to definitely have changed intensity.
Well, in responding, I don't want you to think that this is an egotistical response, but on September 5th, we put out a forecast saying it would be hitting Cape Fear, near Cape Fear, Thursday night and Friday. Those maps have all been out on public notice, so the storm is basically doing what it's supposed to do. It did weaken a bit, but let me say something about this weakening. Now, where do you think there's more energy? If you get a wind gust to 125 miles an hour for maybe 10 seconds, or you get 70 to 100 mile an hour winds for 12 to 24 hours. Where do you think there's more energy in a storm? Well, you got to understand something about that Saffir-Simpson scale. It's only concerned with one wind at one spot, measuring the highest wind. This is an enormous storm. Hurricane-force wind gusts have occurred out 150 miles northeast of the center. We just had a wind gust in Wilmington, North Carolina, the second highest ever recorded, only behind Hurricane Helene in 1958, which had a 930 millibar pressure. This is 958 millibars. When this storm is all said and done, we're going to understand that the immense power of the storm, though not focused its fury at the center, was spread out more, and because of that, it will be every bit as bad as what's been advertised. So as far as the end game of the storm goes, you have to understand that when you get into a situation where it's very close to land, the steering currents are breaking down, it starts meandering. If you've noticed over the last couple of hours, it's moved southwest and even south-southwest. It's south of Wilmington. It didn't go over Wilmington. And what we are most fearful of, and what we've been talking about the past couple of days, is it comes back over the water, goes just southeast of Myrtle Beach, then hits Myrtle Beach underneath it, which would mean instead of having northwest winds, you shift the wind into the east and southeast all across the Grand Strand, and that gives them the extra tidal surge also to go along with the 2 feet of rain they're going to get. So I think it's sort of a pick your poison type situation here.
Well, how long are we going to be dealing with this storm?
Well, in different forms, we'll deal with it until Tuesday because as far as tomorrow morning goes, I think the storm will be near Myrtle Beach. I'm not so sure they'll still have it classified as a hurricane, but they'll be getting racked on the Grand Strand tomorrow morning. The winds will be diminishing by that time across Wilmington and southern North Carolina, but they still have another 12 to 18 hours of this because it's moving so slow. Then it'll be out near Columbia. Between Columbia and Greenville, Spartanburg, it looks like, on Sunday. Then Monday, the center will probably be up near Knoxville, Tennessee. And Tuesday, probably over my house in State College, Pennsylvania, because all it wants to do here is rain this summer. And without trying to be cute about that, our rivers in Pennsylvania and Virginia are already loaded up with water. Another 3 to 6 inches of rain from the remnants of a tropical cyclone means that there's going to be a lot of river flooding. And something else we got to worry about is tornadoes. We've already had a couple of tornado warnings, but as this gets inland, starts breaking up to the right of the path, parts of North Carolina, South Carolina, and then up into Virginia and the mid-Atlantic states, there's probably going to be tornadic activity with this. That's what happens with these big, powerful storms that have gathered all that energy one way or the other. Remember, folks, tropical cyclones are nature's way of taking heat out of the tropics and redistributing the heat into the temperate regions. They've been here forever. It's hurricane season. Occasionally a hurricane shows up, sometimes more, sometimes less. In this particular case so far, we've been very blessed. We've only had one hurricane, and that's the one you see right now.
Well, let's go back to South Carolina and Myrtle Beach in particular. Tomorrow morning, what sort of storm surge are you anticipating there?
Well, I'm going with what I think the Hurricane Center has a good idea there. I'm just explaining the nervousness I have because of the forecast that I've been looking at has had a worry about it dropping south of Myrtle Beach. Now, can I say definitely that's going to happen? I mean, only God knows tomorrow, but I do think this jog south-southwest along the coast, and you could see it as well as I. You don't need me to tell you which way the storm's moving because you just look at the radar. It's been turning southwest, gets it back out over that water, and then it comes in under Myrtle Beach. So Myrtle Beach is going to be a very, very tough forecast. I hate to say it, but it's a kind of forecast you got to look at it every hour for the next 12 to 18 hours before you make a final call. I'm very certain about the rain. I'm just not certain whether the wind goes into the east and northeast at Myrtle Beach, which is very different from the northwest wind they have now. If you've been watching pictures of Myrtle Beach, there's sand blowing around because the wind's blowing from the northwest right now. Northeast wind is very, very different there as it piles water in. Remember, folks, one of the things we talked about yesterday, the past couple of days, the shape of the coastline causes a storm to tighten up when it's coming from the ocean. You see how the coast is shaped like a cup? Well, what happens is the storm doesn't want to go ashore, so those bands tighten up, and you saw the eye tighten up. The worry is that if it comes back out over the water, it'll try to do the same thing around Myrtle Beach tomorrow morning.
Well, what do you think about the rest of hurricane season? We've got 2 more months to go. Should we anticipate we're going to see more storms?
Yeah, I think that we shut down over the next 10 days. In fact, we got all these storms out. It's great. You see people talk, this is because of climate change. Well, how come Isaac fell apart at the height of the hurricanes? These are the Caribbean, right? There's so many more factors. The totality of the picture runs the show, not this little thing or that little thing. But what happens is for the next 7 to 10 days, the tropics quiet down. Then after September 26th, we're forecasting them to come back up again, and we may have one more big burst. And I'm very concerned about the Southwest Atlantic, the Western Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico. Last week of September, first week of October, more than normal activity. It might even originate off Africa, try to come across. But this time, instead of falling apart in the Caribbean, it gets very intense in the Caribbean. They like to do that at the end of the year. By the way, one more thing. Southern California and the Southwest, do not be surprised if we get one of these systems develop off Mexico and recurve up in there. And by the way, all this is pointing the way to a cold, stormy winter. And as a matter of fact, I got Virginia Beach targeted for relative to average. There's a lot of cold and a lot of snow this year, so you might want to think about that.
Well, Joe, you're just full of good news today.
Well, come on. Listen,
safe place for anyone.
No, let me say something. Something I tell my kids and we have in our family. The trials you face today are because of the blessings that got you here anyway. And I'm serious about that. Sometimes I think, you know, when you look at the weather, this is a horrible situation, but almost every day is nice. Or fairly nice. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are today. So we got to put up with this. There's always some bad out there, and that's just the way nature is.
All right. Well, Joe, thanks for being with us.